So in this sermon, I'm going to connect today's gospel to the gospel that the church read last week from John. They're going to be kind of interchanging throughout the sermon. Questions of faith and belief brought me to this approach. 2 consecutive weeks on the same sort of theme in Mark and in John and Luke. Jesus himself stood among the disciples and said to them, "Shalom Aleichem, peace be with you." And as the text says, they were startled and terrified. It says more than that, actually. It says they were startled, terrified, thought they were seeing a ghost, frightened, with doubts arising. It was an intense experience for them. Jesus loved his disciples, despite the fact they never really understood what he meant, what he was saying or doing. Again, startled, terrified, seeing all this amidst their joy. It took a while for when Jesus said, peace of the Lord be with you, for them to say, and also with you. They just weren't ready yet, right? So we think about the gospel reading last Sunday. When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, the doors of the house where the disciples had met, this was the evening of the morning of resurrection. The disciples had met and the doors were locked in fear of the Jewish authorities and the Roman military government with whom they colluded with to crucify the Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of life. Earlier on that Easter Sunday morning, Mary Magdalene visited the tomb, and to her astonishment, she spoke with the risen Jesus Christ in the garden nearby. The Lord told Mary to go to my fathers and say to them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and to your God. She went straight to the disciples and told them, I have seen the Lord, and passed on the message of his ascension. The gospel writer John gives zero information whatsoever about how the disciples received this new added information. Peter and another disciple had seen the empty tomb when they left, but they had not seen Jesus. The door was locked that evening for fear. It appears that neither an empty tomb nor a resurrection experience, Mary Magdalene's resurrection experience, were enough to make a difference that Sunday night. They were fearful and their hearts were locked up. Continuing in John, about that time, Jesus came and stood among them and could have said, you faithless cowards, you untrusting doubters, you walked away from me. Who do you trust? Didn't Mary Magdalene tell you that I am risen and I'm going to my Father? Who is your Father? It seems that the disciples were dwelling in the land of locked doors and closed locked doors. Fearful, suspicious, doubting. Who can I trust? Who can we trust? But Jesus didn't say, I'm through with you all. He said, Shalom Aleichem, peace be with you. The disciples were loved. Indeed, the church might have been vanquished, destroyed. Jesus could have fired all the disciples and declared that he will begin again with highly disciplined, trustworthy associates. But that is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. His gospel is not the gospel of perfection or superiority or violence. He didn't walk the way of the cross for those values. His gospel was and is about trust, faith, hope, forgiveness. He went to the cross for love itself. He went to the cross for life itself. But we know that Thomas was not one of them. So the other disciples told, we have seen the Lord. He said to them, unless I see the marks of all these sort of clear proof, I will not believe. So Thomas cannot be convinced based on what other people are saying to him or what they've seen. We call him a doubter, doubting Thomas. But who in that room before Jesus showed up, who in that room didn't doubt the stories other followers of Jesus had told until they had seen the Lord themselves? Didn't they say that the resurrection story was an idle tale made up by the women? A week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. Doors were shut, still a little fearful. Peace be with you. And he said to Thomas, put your finger here to see my hands. Reach out. Do not doubt, but believe. And of course, he echoes that with my Lord and my God, this fantastic proclamation. And he says back, Jesus says, have you believed because you've seen it? Blessed are those who have not seen the risen Lord, yet have come to believe. That's the message. But this is the rub. Believing without seeing requires a vast reservoir of trust and faith. We are not divine beings. We are garden variety human beings who want to have faith. We have desire to believe, but we wobble back and forth. Faithful, faithless, but usually somewhere in the middle of that. Faith and belief are cousins, not twins. Faith is manifested when we trust God or another person, though we cannot be certain. Belief is about our assessment of what is real, what is truth, like a statement that we believe in one God. Father Almighty is a faith-based statement oriented to telling what we see as true. Believing can transform into doctrines and dogma and canons, and those are useful. But they are complicated. Think of the doctrine of the Holy Trinity, or the humanity and divinity of Jesus, the consecration of the bread and wine, the body and blood of the crucified Christ who is risen and feeding us with his very self. These are very complicated and almost strange to us. But these beliefs are central. Yet they can feel like riddles or puzzles or maze, like walking a maze. They're none of these. They are mysteries. They are divine mysteries. Riddles and puzzles and mazes can't be solved. Divine mysteries are never solved. They are embraced. They are embraced like a deep love for another person in that embrace. Faith seeks trust, compassion, love, God's love, the love of others, the love of all creation, including all living creatures in this spectacular natural world of our planet. You might say that belief and faith are signs of being alive, almost like a living thing within us. And don't you want to love life? Don't you want to love life? To love our life despite our tenuous faith, our brittle hope, our weakened trust, amidst inner wounds and suspicion. Despite this, don't we just want to honor and love life? Several years ago, a friend of mine named Kevin Russell and I wrote a song based on the book of Genesis. The first lines of the song refer to the sixth day of creation. And these words, which I shortened and paraphrased, God gave men and women dominion over all living creatures, and that humans were to be fruitful and multiply, and to fill the earth and subdue it. This blessing from God to the human race was intended to be a gift of grace, not just for the human being, but for all living creatures. The humans represent God for the goodness and well-being of all other living creatures and things. The song he and I wrote, called Let's Humble Ourselves, is a bit of a protest, because humanity has made a mess of the world that God gave us. I think of massive amounts of trash in our oceans and in our rivers, 50, 60 miles of plastic that just kind of comes up from the depths of the ocean. Just things like that are just seem disgusting. The extinction of so many species in the last 50 years is stunning. And the raging anger of people and nations, one against the other. So for that, we added a second verse to the song, which was a reference to the Cain and Abel story. We know the Cain and Abel story. They're the sons of Adam and Eve. So I guess there's 4 people on the planet at that point. They're the sons of Adam and Eve. And God asked them to give a gift. And God preferred the younger brother's gift offering. Well, the big brother, his name's Cain, which meant strong and powerful and right. And the name Abel, which meant vaporous and unimportant. Somehow, the older brother had been repulsed by God. And God favored the younger brother. And this so infuriated Cain that he lured his little brother out into the farmland and murdered him. And it's sort of a parable of human indignity and violence. So this song is a bit of a protest, a bit of a plea. It's like what Kevin and I were saying to each other, do what you really want to do. And that is, you really want to love your life. You want to love life. You just got to do it. If you really love life, you just got to love it. And it goes like this. Does the Bible say, subdue and master? We're crucifying the earth faster and faster. Who are we to be so proud? Who are we to rage so loud? Let's humble ourselves, dip down low. Let's humble ourselves, body and soul. And then the second verse is, did the Bible ask, am I my brother's keeper? There's blood in the earth, sinking deeper and deeper. Who are we to be so proud? Who are we to rage so loud? Let's humble ourselves, dip down low. Let's humble ourselves, body and soul. Can you say amen? Amen. Can you sing amen? Amen. Because if you really love life, you just gotta love it. Sing it now. If you really love life, you just gotta love it. 2 more times. If you really love life, you just gotta love it. Then it gets bigger. If you really love life, you just gotta love it. Can you say amen? Amen. Can you sing amen? Amen. Believing without necessarily seeing, that kind of life is worth your love. Jesus certainly thought so. You really gotta love life, you gotta love it. Now hear me. I fully recognize that in that little song, those phrases about if you really love life, you just gotta love it, it is outlandishly childish and circuitous. But sometimes a little childishness can wake up our burdened heart and souls. And we lean into faith, trusting God, trusting Jesus. We embrace the glorious truth of those divine mysteries. One of which is when we take that Holy Communion with our palms up and wide open to receive God's love for us. It's a way of saying yes and thank you to the risen Christ. That blessing from a priest is a similar reminder that you're loved. Indeed, we are all a part of the mystery of God's life. You're His cherished children. And in our joy, we also know disbelieving and wondering and being startled and frightened with doubts arising, indeed, many times in trial for each of us. Yet, and we give thanks resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ, who I can't see, but I'm virtually certain that he dwells among us.